Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In today's video, we're going to be taking a closer look at the AP Lang Rhetorical Analysis Rubric. I'm going to be sharing with you some tips and tricks that I share with my own students in order to help them improve their score. Before we get started, if you are an AP Lang teacher or student, do me a huge favor and make sure that you are subscribed with your notifications turned on. That way you don't miss any upcoming videos as we prepare for the upcoming AP Lang exam. Also, if you are a TikTok user, I would love it if you would join me over there on that platform as well. As the exam approaches, I'm going to be sharing more shorter form videos over on TikTok to help students feel confident as they prepare for the exam. So let's start with what is quite frankly the easiest point of the rubric, and that is the thesis point. On the AP Lang exam, if your essay has a defensible thesis, you earn 1 point. So to be defensible, the thesis must mention rhetorical choices. Now, personally, I prefer that my students convey the choices with rhetorically accurate verbs, but it is okay to use devices, which are typically in the noun form, or rhetorical appeals. Those do count as well. So one of the things that we look for as we find your thesis is we look for rhetorical choices. So make sure that those are in there. If you need more help with rhetorical choices, I do have a couple of videos on that. I will link them in the description box below, but basically a rhetorical choice is what the writer is doing. So think about what they're doing on purpose as they're crafting their speech. For classroom purposes, I require my students to reference what I call the MAP, which stands for message, argument, or purpose. Doing so helps students be more specific, and it helps them make sure that they are addressing the prompt, because the prompt is going to ask you about the message, argument, or purpose. Now, technically, for exam purposes, students just need to mention rhetorical choices. However, the thesis will be stronger if you mention the MAP, which is why I require my students to have that in their thesis as well. In order to earn the thesis point, you don't want to just summarize the passage. It is okay to use some of the wording from the prompt, but you should dig deeper and possibly use synonyms when appropriate. So for instance, in some prompts, they might tell you what the message is. Like they might say, this person's message of perseverance. It's okay to say message of perseverance in your thesis. You could also use a synonym instead of perseverance if you want to. Now, they won't always tell you the message, argument, or purpose. They'll tell you what to look for, but they might just say, convey her message, and they might not tell you what the message is. So you want to be specific. You want to show the person reading your essay that you understand the message, argument, or purpose of the speech. You're also going to want to bring this up in your body paragraphs as well. Now let's move on to row B, which is evidence and commentary. This is where students can earn the bulk of their points. So I think this is the most important section of the rubric. That being said, it's arguably the most confusing section of the rubric as well, not just for students, but sometimes also for teachers. So I want to give you tips on what I look for so you can see the differences between the scores. That way, hopefully you can improve to the score that you're shooting for. So what does a 1 look like? Honestly, a 1 summarizes the passage. It's possible that if a person earns a 1 in evidence and commentary, that they might mention rhetorical choices, but there's little to no explanation. So it might say something like, the writer uses logos, and then it might move on to something else. The second that we see words like shows, highlights, illustrates, or even the word because, then we're looking at the potential for a 2 in evidence and commentary. So it's very easy to move your score from a 1 in row B to a 2. Now, this is just my personal opinion, but one thing that I've noticed from reading thousands of student essays is that there are a lot of different ways for students to earn a 2 in row B. So we could have some essays that are just barely a 2, and then we could have essays that are a 2, but they're almost a 3. They're just not quite there yet. And I think sometimes this can be frustrating for students because you might be getting better, but you still might be achieving the same score. Don't give up on yourself. Sometimes it seems like there's a big jump from a 2 to a 3 and a 3 to a 4. So just keep working at it and give it time. But let's talk about what a 2 looks like. So first of all, a 2 in row B, so the evidence and commentary row, it's going to have some evidence and commentary. So we're going to see specific references to the text, either in the form of a direct quote or a paraphrase, and there is going to be some commentary. Now, that commentary will be present, but it might not be very strong. So it's possible that it could be really simplistic or limited. It's also possible that the essay could have a weak or faulty line of reasoning, so the essay could feel disjointed or underdeveloped. So what do I mean when I say limited commentary? Sometimes students use idioms or these prepackaged expressions that are a little bit empty. So for instance, opens the reader's eyes, paints a picture in the audience's mind, tugs on the audience's heartstrings. It's really tempting to write these phrases, especially if you're writing an essay under pressure. But to be honest, those phrases aren't very specific. So if we're talking about opening the reader's eyes, what does that actually mean? Like, what are the readers now aware of that they weren't aware of before? And why does that matter? If we're painting a picture for the audience, chances are there's description, imagery, or detail. Talk about the word choice in that and why it matters. And talk about the emotion that the audience might feel after hearing those words. Don't just say paints a picture. And if you want to use the expression about tugging on the audience's heartstrings, that's an emotional appeal. So which emotion are they trying to evoke from their audience and why? Why is that emotion necessary or appropriate for that audience on that occasion? So here's the good thing about recognizing what limited commentary is. There's a way to fix it and make it more specific. Now, something else that I typically see with responses that earn a 2 in row B is the commentary frequently summarizes the evidence. So we'll see a quote and then the commentary that follows isn't really adding any new information. It's just kind of restating the quote in different words. That's not super helpful because remember, commentary is supposed to explain the significance of the evidence. So the commentary basically answers the question, why, or maybe so what? Now, it's possible that an essay that scores a 2 in row B uses verbs like shows. There are some better verbs. So verbs like illustrates, highlights, demonstrates, underscores, emphasizes. Try not to just use the verb shows, but we want to see a verb like that in your commentary because that's helping you develop your commentary a little bit more. That's going to help elevate your essay from a 1 in row B to a 2 in row B. And like I said, there's a range of the execution. You also want to add something that I call a because clause. And that's probably not the official grammatical name for it, but that's what I call it in my classroom. Because if students use the word because and then finish the sentence and keep asking themselves why, they're going to write more commentary. And that's our goal. We want more commentary than evidence. So we want to be choosing shorter quotes and having more to say about those quotes to hopefully improve our score. Now, even though there is commentary in a response that earns a 2, chances are it might not really connect to the rhetorical situation. The essay might not mention the message, argument, or purpose, or if it does, usually it's really simplistic. Like it'll say something like, the writer does this in order to convey their message. And so, yes, the person might have mentioned the message, but you didn't tell me what the message is, and you didn't tell me why they did that or why the message is important. So remember, keep asking yourself why. Now, we typically answer a why question with because. That's why adding the word because can help you improve your commentary. Now let's talk about what a 3 in row B looks like. For many students, this is the score that they're shooting for, especially at the beginning or midway point of the year, because a 3 shows that you understand the task of rhetorical analysis. It's not perfect, but you do understand what you're supposed to be doing. So what does a 3 in row B look like? Well, first of all, you're going to have specific evidence to support your claims. So whatever claim you make, whether it's the topic sentence of your paragraph or a claim within your paragraph, you're going to prove that with evidence. Now, evidence should be followed with commentary. So the commentary is going to explain how some of the evidence supports the line of reasoning. Now, notice that I said some. Because honestly, there are times when an essay that scores a 3 in row B is a little bit inconsistent. So there might be instances of really strong, really developed commentary. And then there might be other instances where the commentary is a little bit less developed, maybe not as insightful. But we want to make sure that we follow our evidence with commentary. Now, here's something that surprised my students when this rubric was released a couple years ago. And it's something that I think students can use to their advantage. You need to connect at least one choice to the message, argument, or purpose. So you can have one strong paragraph and one or two paragraphs that are close, and you can still earn a 3 in row B. So I tell my students who struggle with pacing to make sure that they have at least one paragraph that is their home run paragraph. That's what we started calling it a couple years ago. Basically, make sure that you have one paragraph that thoroughly demonstrates you understand rhetorical analysis. You want claims, you want evidence, you want commentary. You want it to be really developed and really insightful. And if you don't have time to do 2 paragraphs to that level, hopefully that one paragraph that you did is strong enough. Now, obviously, I want you to try to do 2 or even 3 strong paragraphs if you can in your body of your essay. But we want to make sure that we understand that we really just need one paragraph to potentially elevate our score. Now, these next couple bullet points on the slide can be a game changer for students if you use it to your advantage correctly. So first of all, a 3 in row B is going to connect one choice to the message, argument, or purpose and is going to do so well. So make sure as you are writing a rhetorical analysis essay that you keep in mind what your prompt is actually asking you. If you are asked about the message, make sure that you are explaining how that rhetorical choice helps the writer convey their message. Don't ignore the prompt. Now, if your prompt asks about message, you can still talk about purpose and vice versa. So you want to make sure that you are explaining why the writer is doing it, and that's going to tie to the purpose and also sometimes their message or argument. So don't leave that out. Now, it does say one choice connects to the message, argument, or purpose, and you might be thinking, okay, so I just have to do it one time. What if I have 2 body paragraphs? Well, I want you to try to do it in each body paragraph that you write. However, one body paragraph might be stronger than the other, and in some cases, this can elevate your score. I've seen essays where a student had a really strong body paragraph, and it demonstrated their understanding of rhetorical analysis. They truly understood the passage. The commentary was quite strong, but then maybe they had 1 or 2 other body paragraphs that weren't as strong. It could have been because they ran out of time. It could have been because the analysis itself was just not as strong, but that one paragraph was enough for the 3 in row B. And when I tell my students this, it actually gives them a bit of confidence because as much as we want you to be consistently developing your paragraphs, sometimes in 40 minutes and the pressure of the exam, that's not possible. So make sure that you have at least one paragraph that is super strong. It doesn't even have to be your first body paragraph. I've seen essays where it was the second body paragraph instead, or maybe the third. Now, just to clarify, for a rhetorical analysis essay where you only have 40 minutes to write, it is okay to have 2 body paragraphs. I look for quality over quantity. So 2 body paragraphs is okay. Make sure you are really developing your ideas. But if you're trying to get your essay score from a 2 in row B to a 3 in row B, what I would recommend you do the next time you have a timed essay is when you're planning your essay, think about which body paragraph you can write better and pour your heart and soul into that paragraph, develop it as well as you possibly can, and see if that's enough to get your score to a 3 in row B. Now, here's some other tips to help you get a 3 in row B. We want to see analysis of specific words and details. That's going to help your argument. So let's say you're talking about repetition. Don't just tell us which word they repeat. Tell us why that specific word is meaningful. If you're analyzing a comparison, look at the word choice within the comparison. Remember, too, that word choice contributes to tone. So when you're selecting your evidence for a rhetorical choice, don't just think of the choice you're trying to analyze. Look at the word choice in the quote that you've chosen. Adding that to your analysis can potentially help your score. We also want to see multiple supporting claims. So your thesis is your overarching claim. You need more than one claim. Usually students achieve this by having multiple body paragraphs, like I said before, at least 2, but you can also technically have more than one claim in a body paragraph itself. So make sure that you have multiple claims. This does not mean that you need 20 claims in your essay, but we want to make sure that whichever claims you make, you're trying very hard to support those claims with evidence and commentary. Now, here's the thing about a 3, and you probably already guessed this if you know that there are 4 possible points. A 3 out of 4 is not perfect, and that's okay. There might be some commentary that is uneven, or it might not fully prove the claim. So it might be there, but it might not be strong enough. And chances are that's probably why the essay doesn't get elevated to a 4. Now you might be wondering, what is uneven commentary? This can look like a couple different things in student writing. It could be that there is very little commentary, or it could mean that the commentary is inconsistent throughout the paragraph or the essay. One thing that I have my students do is I sometimes have them highlight their evidence in one color and their commentary in another color. Sometimes as their teacher, I do it for them so they can see what I consider to be their commentary. The reason why I do this is so that they can see that in certain spots, maybe they have too much evidence and not enough commentary, or maybe there's commentary, but it's just kind of inconsistent or it's too thin. That way they know where to improve as they revise or write their next essay. Now that we understand what a 3 looks like, let's talk about how to get that 3 to a 4. So first of all, we want specific evidence for all claims. That has not changed. But now, instead of having possibly uneven commentary, we need our commentary to be consistent. I think that's the biggest difference between a 3 and a 4, is that both, at least in my opinion, demonstrate that the student understands rhetorical analysis. It's just that the difference is that a 3 is kind of in and out and it's a little bit inconsistent, whereas a 4 in evidence and commentary is very consistent the entire time. So for those that were trying to get their score from a 2 to a 3, and I said focus on making one of your body paragraphs super, super strong, if you're working on going from a 3 to a 4, now we want to work on consistency. So now we want all of our paragraphs to be strong. Another hallmark of a 4 in row B is that it explains how multiple choices connect to the message, argument, or purpose. So in a 3, it might be that one choice is connected to the message, argument, or purpose. But in a 4, each rhetorical choice that the student analyzes is connected to the message, argument, or purpose. And I want to make a distinction here. It has to be done well. It's not just that we need to see the word message in all your body paragraphs. It's not just name dropping the word message. We want to see that consistent analysis. An essay that scores a 4 has keen insight into the text. And then the last bullet point here is something I already mentioned, but we want to see consistent, even paragraphs. Now, as with an essay that scores a 3 in row B, for a 4 in row B, we're still looking for analysis of keywords and details. We also see an organized argument with multiple developed claims. So in a 3, the argument might have gotten a little iffy at times. Things might have been a little underdeveloped in a certain spot or two. But for a 4, it's going to be very organized and very developed. And then another trait of a 4 in row B is that it has clear explanations and clear analysis. Now let's talk about the last point on the rubric, the sophistication point. I'm going to be very honest. For most of the year, I tell my students not to worry about the sophistication point. And that's because I think it adds a lot of unnecessary stress, especially to AP students who might be used to making A's or might be used to getting a perfect score. The sophistication point is pretty rare. Depending on which year we're talking about, anywhere from 5 to 9% of students earn this point. So I want to be clear, it's not that it's unattainable, but in my personal opinion, I don't think every student needs to be shooting for this point. That being said, I think it's important to know what sophistication could look like, because what I've seen is as students better understand sophistication, even if they don't earn the sophistication point on their essay, attempting an element of sophistication helps their commentary and their overall writing style. And at the end of the day, yes, we want to score as well as we can on the exam, but we're also taking this class to learn how to be better writers. So yes, the sophistication point is difficult to earn, and it's important to remember that sophistication must be consistent throughout the essay. You can't just earn the point because you had a few elevated words or a strong sentence. It has to be consistent throughout the entire essay. Something else to know is that you do not need to earn all 4 points in evidence and commentary to earn the sophistication point. So for example, a student can earn a score of a 1-3-1, meaning they got the thesis point, 3 out of 4 in evidence and commentary, and the sophistication point. It's also possible that a student can earn a 1-4-1 or even a 1-4-0. A student can earn all the points in evidence and commentary, but they might not earn the sophistication point. The reason why they're called row A, row B, and row C is because they're viewed separately. And this actually works in the student's favor. So for row C, the sophistication point, students can either earn a 0 or a 1. So if you want to know how to earn that sophistication point, let me tell you a couple different ways that you can do it. One is by situating the issue in a broader context. In my opinion, as a teacher, this is the easiest way to teach students how to earn that point. Now, I'm not guaranteeing the point by any means, but I think this is the easiest way for students to earn the point. So what does broader context actually mean? Well, depending on the passage, you might be able to look at the historical impact or significance. Situating the passage in a broader context is going to be easier for some passages than others, but if you understand the historical significance beyond what the passage says, and you can perhaps incorporate that in either your intro, your commentary, or your conclusion, then it's possible that you could elevate the sophistication of your essay. Something else to think about is, why is this message or topic relevant today? This can be a great way to develop a conclusion. Let me give you a quick example. I don't often encourage students to bring up any personal experience at all in rhetorical analysis because that's not the task. However, in reading an essay that one of my students wrote about the Sotomayor piece, which dealt with the topic of identity, in the student's conclusion, they talked about how the idea of identity was relevant today, and they brought up their own experience as a first-generation American. Now, keep in mind, in the body paragraphs, that student was analyzing the rhetorical choices and connecting to message, argument, or purpose. However, in the conclusion, they made it more personal, and I think that's okay. But I don't want you trying to make personal connections to the passage throughout the body of your essay. Please don't misunderstand. Let me give you another example. I often have my students read FDR's Pearl Harbor speech. This is the speech he gave asking Congress to declare war on the Empire of Japan. Many of my students have outside knowledge of World War II from their American history classes, and so they know that we did go to war, and they know the outcome of that war, and they know a lot of other really cool historical facts that they sometimes incorporate into the conclusion of their essay, and doing so helps situate the issue in a broader context because they're going beyond what the speech says. Let me give you one more quick example. I sometimes have my students respond to the exam prompt where it was a speech by Barack Obama, where he was paying tribute to Rosa Parks, dedicating a statue to her. In the speech, Barack Obama pays tribute to Rosa Parks and shares her story, and he talks about how her legacy and her message are significant for that time period when he was giving the speech. So one way that my students sometimes extend that and situate it in a broader context is they look at the time period from when he gave his speech to the current time period, and they look at how things have changed, not just from the civil rights era to the time that Obama gave the speech, but also from the time he gave the speech to now. And here's the thing, they have to go deeper than just, oh, things have gotten better, but there's still things to work on. That's too vague. They have to bring up specific instances and connect it to his message as well. So the thing about this is realizing that situating it in a broader context is not as simple as saying, oh, this issue is still pertinent today. You have to really give concrete examples as to why. Now, let me mention one thing here, because I did say that a lot of my students do this in their conclusion paragraph. But I want to be very clear. You do not technically need a conclusion. And I have several students who do not write one, and that is perfectly okay. Because for them, their goal is to write stronger body paragraphs. They're working on their evidence and commentary points. However, my students who write at perhaps a quicker pace and they have time for a conclusion, this is one of the tips that I give them to try to develop their conclusion in a more sophisticated way. Because sometimes what we see is students just basically write a conclusion that re-says all the points they just said in their essay. And honestly, those types of conclusions are not super helpful because the essay is pretty short. I know what you said in your essay because I just read it. So instead of recapping all your main ideas, try to use your conclusion to ask yourself, so what? And really think about the topic or the message of the text in a broader context. And even if you don't earn the sophistication point, you will at least have ended your essay in a more thought-provoking way. Now, one other thing to consider for sophistication in this way is to analyze why the writer made these particular choices that you've talked about in your essay for this audience on this occasion. So really think about how and why they tailored their speech to that specific audience at that specific event. This is a great way to add additional commentary and analysis to your body paragraphs. So again, even if it doesn't earn you the sophistication point, if you're struggling with commentary, ask yourself why this choice for this audience on this occasion. Another way that students can earn sophistication is through a vivid and descriptive style. Now, I'm going to give you some quick tips to improve your style, but please keep in mind this doesn't automatically guarantee the sophistication point. One thing that you can start by doing is adding in adjectives and adverbs to help your writing be more precise. You also want to practice varying your syntax or sentence structure. Try to incorporate appropriate advanced punctuation, things like colons, dashes, semicolons, or using commas to offset non-essentials or appositives. If you're not sure how to use these different types of punctuation, I do have separate videos for this on my channel. I'll link those in the description box below, but if you're also studying for the SAT or the ACT, you're going to want to know how to use these types of punctuation because it's on the multiple choice. And if you understand how to do it for multiple choice, start to include it in your writing. But please don't overdo it. Please don't try to put a comma or a dash in every single sentence. Use it selectively and use it meaningfully. Now, as far as a vivid and descriptive style, some of my students who have done this the best, in my opinion, were my students who really liked creative writing because they already had this authorial voice. And so they were the ones that like to try to experiment. Now, part of the reason why I said my students who like creative writing is because these are the students who like to play with language. It does not mean that rhetorical analysis is a creative essay because it is not a form of creative writing. So I don't want you to be trying to insert characters or dialogue or anything like that. Stick to the task. But if you're the type of person who likes to experiment with your language, then maybe the vivid and descriptive style component of sophistication is for you. There are 3 different ways to earn sophistication. We've talked about 2 of them, but keep in mind that you only technically need to do 1 to earn the point. So let's talk about the 3rd way to earn the sophistication point, and that is by examining tensions and complexities. In some sense, I think the examining tensions and complexities method of sophistication might be the most difficult for students. That being said, though, there are certain prompts that I think really lend themselves to having students examine the tensions and complexities. So one way to do this is to look at the tension between the roles of the speaker and the audience. Some prompts that I think students could do this very effectively for would be the Abigail Adams prompt, Gandhi's letter to Lord Irwin, because of his role and Lord Irwin's role. Gandhi uses very formal language because of his role and how he wants to appear, but at the same time, he's also giving Lord Irwin an ultimatum. So that rhetorical situation and the language lends itself to examining those tensions and complexities. And a 3rd one that comes to mind for this is the Banneker prompt, in which Banneker is writing to Thomas Jefferson and essentially calling him a hypocrite, but in a very respectful way. So if you're familiar with those prompts, those are ones that I think lend themselves to students analyzing the tensions and complexities. And if students know this, then perhaps when they're presented with a new prompt that has some sort of similar tension or complexity, then they might realize this and be able to analyze it. Another way to examine the tensions and complexities is by acknowledging and analyzing the choices that the writer makes in relation to relevant historical tensions. So that's kind of what I meant before when I was talking about the word choice. Perhaps the person is having to write in a very formal way so as not to totally insult the person that they're writing to, but at the same time, they're having to develop their argument and hold their ground, things like that. So we want to perhaps look at the role of the speaker and the audience, and then also the word choice and the choices that they're making to examine that complexity. All right, so there you have it. That's a breakdown of the AP Lang rubric for rhetorical analysis. I will be doing this for both synthesis and argument as well. So if you're looking forward to those videos, then please go ahead and make sure you're subscribed. If you found this video helpful, please do me a favor and give the video a thumbs up. That lets other teachers and students know that the video could benefit them as well. And before you go, don't forget to check out the description box below. I will link other helpful videos there. And once again, if you are a TikTok user, please go follow Coach Hall Writes over on TikTok. I post videos frequently on that platform, and I also answer student questions. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy writing!